of the ECUA to order. Mr. Stevens will offer the invocation and the pledge, and we invite you to join us, please.
Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this day. I want to thank you for how many blessings you have bestowed upon us. I want to thank you for the beautiful weather we've been having. Please continue to give us humility, discernment as we make decisions to better the lives of our fellow citizens of Sylvia County. Christ name I pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. The next item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any additions to the agenda or changes? Seeing none, do we have a motion to accept the agenda as submitted? Mr. Stevens?
I'll second.
How about if you move it first? You move it? Yes. Okay. Is there a second, Mr. Perkins?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please vote. Oh. And it passes 5-0. We have no public hearings today. We come to the open forum, and I have 3 people who have requested to speak to us in open forum. The first one is Terry Bozeman at 1411 Lemhurst Road. Ms. Bozeman, if you will come to the podium. Did you have a certain order you wanted to speak in? I see. Okay. Okay, come. So you are Mr. Woodward? Okay. Mr. Woodward, there's a speak button in front of you. If you will press that and the red light, there you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
And you are recognized.
I'm Dave Woodward. I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a resident of this neighborhood, and we want to visit with you about trash collection. And I have not exhibits, but visual aids. I thought I would spare you the 10-minute slideshow. So may I pass these out?
Yes, you may. It's by the country club.
I had given you all a schematic on the first page, which I copied from the property appraiser's maps. Of course, they are not to scale, but they're close enough we can understand what's going on. We live on Lemhurst Road. Lemhurst Road is a street that you see when you go across the bio bridge with the row of townhouses. This row of houses is almost totally continuous. By that I say they're connected. 1 block long. There are 2 houses at the bottom of the road that are not connected, but the rest of us are all connected one way or another. I was told when I moved in there in 2004 by one of the residents that when they moved in, when the project was built in the 80s, they came to this board and requested that the trash collection and garbage be done through the alley. We'll talk about the alley in a second. Because the only way you can get the garbage can to the street is either through your house, or in my instance, a block-long walk and a block to carry the other one and come back, and then repeat the next day to return them. Now, for 30 years, the collection folks went down that alley, collected them, had no problems. If you look at the very top on the second page, there's a house at the very end, abutting Barrancas, facing the neighborhood street, Paleo. and you see a very, very white extension of the alley around that house. The woman who moved in there about a year or so ago was upset because there were some mud holes in that section, and she complained to you folks or to somebody in the agency, and they came out to correct it. She blamed it on the garbage trucks. It was there when I got there. I don't know how long they've been there. I'm not sure the garbage trucks had anything to do with it. But you folks paid to cover that area. Now, the interesting thing is that strip around her house and all the way to the south is an easement. The guy that planned this community or this area had enough foresight to know that when he put them together the way he put them, that there had to be access in the rear. And if you'll look on the second page and look down, you can see the alley is substantial. It's about 30 feet wide, wider at some points than others. Before Sally, we had a real nice collection of bad water oaks at the south end, but Sally did her usual job of helping us do our lawn work, and so they're no longer there. For a while, we got complaints from your drivers that these trees were kind of striking the edge of the truck as it went through. Now, this is a neighborhood of relatively older folks. I'm one of the younger ones, and I had my 79th birthday 2 months ago. There are people who are simply unable to drag a garbage can down the length of that alley and around onto Limhurst or Palaio, as the case may be, to have it collected. And what we would like to prevail upon you folks to do is to restore a service that was offered to this neighborhood for 30 years. Now, we were told that the reason it was suspended, I'm not saying terminated, suspended, was a gentleman who came out to supervise the rebuild on that very pretty strip of white road, looked down and realized that all the garbage cans were behind the houses. And he had some edict that that your equipment could not go on private property. And I can understand that. But we have an easement that's there for the specific purpose of servicing the back of these houses. And the easement crooks all the way around and comes in. It's physically possible for a truck the size of any of your garbage or trash collection vehicles to go the length of that alley and make a left turn, pull out on the street, and keep going. They did it for 30 years. I have several neighbors that have sent you pickup requests, and your very kindly gentleman came out a week or so ago to see what the situation was. And they said, well, we can pick up your garbage can and take it out to the street. And the next question was, well, how do we get them back? Do you bring them back for us? And they said, oh, no, that's your problem. So we still haven't resolved the problem under the system that these guys proposed, although it's a sensible provision. So what we would like for y'all to do is seriously consider restoring the trash and garbage collection down our alley. And we'd invite you to come take a look at our alley. Ms. Bozeman will tell you that she went out and measured Broadmoor. If you look at the aerial photograph, the parallel street to the east is Broadmoor Lane. Broadmoor Lane is very little more than an alley. It just happens to be paved. It goes across the end of the St. Thomas More Church property. Several of the houses on the west side are residences for retired priests. At the bottom of the street, there's a row of about 6 townhouses that are on the east side of the road, and those have the privilege of having their garbage collected from the rear because the garbage truck goes down that street, or that street. We think it's an alley. But it's 16 feet wide. I think it's down to 13 feet as its narrowest point. Our alley's 30 feet wide at the minimum. So we'd really like for y'all to consider restoring our trash and garbage collection.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward, and if you'll stay right there, there are a couple of people with their lights on who probably want to address this or ask you questions, and I'll
I'll be
start.
glad to see if I can answer them.
Okay. Mr. Perkins.
So on On the alley, does it have ingress and egress from both Barrancas and Bay Shore?
It doesn't go directly onto Barrancas, it curves around and goes to Paleo, because it would be a safety hazard
Okay.
for
But
it to
the-
go out into Barrancas, but
But
it
the
also.
truck can go in either
Either
way. It
end.
doesn't have to back up all the way
No,
down the
No,
alley.
it can go in either end. Historically, they've entered from the Bay Shore Drive, gone up, made the curve, and gone out onto Paleo.
Madam Chairman, after looking at this, I'd like to make a motion that we have staff meet with the neighbors and do everything they can to facilitate this back alley pickup. I mean, I don't see any reason why we couldn't, if we did for 30 years. I mean, if it's not reasonable to expect somebody, especially that lives in the middle here, regardless of whether they're elderly or not, to bring it all the way around to the front and then all the way back if there's 30 feet there and there's no tree obstructions. And it looks to me what happened in this situation is just basic government overreaction. You know, we had the new neighbor move in, they had the potholes and stuff. We went out and said, oh my, this is a problem, we don't want to be paying for, these damages and stuff like this, and we said, we're not gonna do that anymore. I just think it'd be worthy for us to, if you can get in either way, it's not like they're having to back the truck up and have hazards like that. I think the right thing to do for these citizens would be, and I'm not saying, there might be something I don't know, but I'm saying, have staff meet with them, and if there's any way we can do it, go ahead and just pick them up in the alley.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and there are a number of lights that are on, but is there a second to this motion?
I'll second.
Ms.
just
Campbell?
to get
Okay,
it
it's
on
been
the
moved and seconded,
conversation.
then I'll go through with the comments. Mr. Stevens, you were next.
Mr. Woodward,
Yes, sir.
in reviewing this map here, so like you said, the
You're talking
easement,
about
the 30-foot easement,
aerial
second page, yes, sir.
photograph,
So again, complete egress from Bay Shore all the way to Paleo.
Yeah.
You're saying it can come through either way. 30-foot.
It's 30 feet all the way.
30-foot all the way at the narrowest point. And then the oak trees, Sally.
Those are
They're
way
gone.
back there they're in people's backyards. for all
Okay. I
practical.
mean, I can just see the foliage here. My only concern would be a truck getting
No,
past that over
It's
there.
been going under those trees easily.
Okay, so you measured it
Yes.
just from I'm just trying to
Yeah,
run over every variable of possibility
they're
when
probably,
we send an
they're
individual out there to
probably
look at
close
this.
to 100 years old.
Sure,
And they're water oaks, they're not live oaks.
Right.
So the limbs are way up on the tree.
right, and the trunks of those, it's still 30 feet, so coming
Yes.
through, okay.
Mhm.
And then again, to reiterate what you probably already stated, no alleyways in between these, so they're connected.
There's no access.
No access from the backyard to the front yard, that sort of
That's
thing.
right.
Down the center.
These houses, for all practical purposes, are party wall houses all the way down. There are a couple of breaks where there's a fire possibility, maybe 4 feet wide between two houses, but you can't even take the garbage cans down those. If
Because you
they're
probably have
open.
HVACs and air condenser units blocking those.
Yeah, a lot of air conditioners are stuck in that area.
That's typically what they do when they have small setbacks on those. Okay, and again, I kind of champion what Mr. Perkins said. I mean, other than, referring to counsel and finding out you being an attorney, I'm sure you can appreciate that, what type of,
I sat in the same chair he
Okay.
did for another committee. I
Okay.
understand the situation.
so,
So-
just running it past,
Okay,
okay,
that's it.
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Ms. Campbell?
Well,
And excuse me for a moment. If
Yeah.
we will direct all conversation, I know it's awkward, but through the chair, just
Sure.
parliamentary is the way
Yes,
to do it
ma'am.
instead of back and forth. Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
so, I see the problem, and my only issue is, do we have legal right to be on that property? So I would like staff to check that out, because, if we may not have the legal right to be down that alley. So, just looking at it online, I don't see that it has a tax ID number or anything, so if staff and Robert look at it, tell us that they can do something, then I'm fine with it. And you understand that, Mr. Woodward, if
Yes,
we
ma'am.
don't have legal right to be there, then maybe we can figure out how to help you
Well-
get the legal right. Do you know who owns the easement?
We own the easement. Each property owner owns their portion of that 30 feet, all the way back to the fence across the line. I'm sorry I didn't make that clear. I sat and debated this in my head for a long time, and there is a specific easement for the curve that goes out to Paleo, But each of the others, considering it's been over 30 years that we have used each other's property to get back and forth, we have a reciprocal negative easement over each other's property. And it's a public easement. Anybody who wants to can walk down that alley without any problem. We don't persecute them or prosecute them for trespass or anything like that.
Thank you.
That
Ms.
answers
Campbell.
my question.
Mr.
but
Woody.
I think that we need legal to take a look at the easement, and if we don't have the right, the right to get over it, then maybe we can create the right to get over it. All right. Thanks, Rob.
Let me point out, there is not a recorded plat of this property.
Okay. Mr. Woody.
Madam Chair, thank you, Mr. Woodward, for bringing this before the board again. It has been discussed with some of your neighbors as well, and there are basically two concerns that we've had. The minor of the two are some concerns for tree canopy. While they are high enough that we can drive under them, there are some challenges when we pick up the equipment and our overhead arm then picks the equipment up above. We'll catch limbs and have some problems. But I think that's something that frankly can and should be able to be something we should coordinate with and be able to address. I think that's a solvable problem.
Well,
But the more significant one is the property all the way to the north end. We don't have any qualms about what we've reviewed in terms of, I'd say staff, not legal. Robert absolutely needs to review all documents. But I believe ingress egress really isn't a problem that we debate on the north-south alleyway. But at the far north end, with that trapezoidal property, we're not aware of an easement, a recorded easement, that allows us to access from the alleyway back to Paleo. So if you have that instrument, we'd very much like to review that.
well, I have a copy of that person's survey when they bought the property, and the easement appears on the survey. And I've examined the legal description, and it's in the legal description,
Okay.
which is all you really need.
That's really what started this whole issue from our perspective, was that specific section.
But no, it's, from my point of view, in my opinion, having done property law for over 50 years, there's a reciprocal negative easement from one property owner to the other. Those lots facing Limhurst are 130 feet deep, and people have built on the front 100 feet and left the 30 feet in the back. For instance, my house is 60 feet deep by 22 feet wide, and it's two-story. I mean, but it's a glorified shotgun house is what it really amounts to. But there are varying widths. Mrs. Bozeman's house is wider than ours by a number of feet, and it has a two-car garage behind it. So you can see it, if you look at the picture, you can see the houses that have garages behind them are slightly wider lots.
Well, Ms. Bozeman and others came before us. Actually, you weren't there, but you had spoken to me about that, and I certainly know the neighborhood. My mother lives at the Riviera, so
Yeah.
I drive back there all the time. And the truth is, this development was way ahead of its time. I mean, the trend in neo-traditional design now is to have houses that are close to the curb with alleys behind where the utilities are and where the service vehicles come. That's the way Aragon, which is a highly touted area, is. They have all of these. I think that this was, as I say, ahead of its time, and I'd like to see us be able to do it. I know that Mr. Rudd has had some concerns about access, and we need to make sure that we allay those concerns. And I do recall when this came before us before, we made the same motion that Mr. Perkins did, that staff get with the neighbors and work it out, and somehow something fell apart. I would hope that this time we could make it work. It makes so much sense that it needs to happen. And if all the easements are correct, if our trucks can traverse it, I see no reason not to do this.
I'll certainly be happy to be the point person.
Okay.
And any of you are welcome to call me, or anybody on staff is welcome to call me.
And I have a couple of other people who wish to speak, so if, Ms. Campbell.
To save the utility money, Robert, I'd be more than happy to do a title search on that one. I just wanted to say, that's not the only subdivision that's built with
Right.
those alleyways. A lot of downtown Pensacola was built that way, and Navy Point subdivision
Yes.
is exactly that. My son was thinking about buying a house in there this week, and he said, what's this big alley behind it? That's kind of scary. And I went, no, really, this is what that used to be for. And so I kind of explained to him what that alley was for. So, yeah, I'd like to see it restored if we can do it legally.
And Mr. Perkins will remember that Navy Point was another fight, so we'll put that aside for a while. Mr. Perkins, you're
Yeah,
recognized.
East Pensacola Heights has those alleyways
Yeah.
too. But I think from what Mr. Woody said, that the main reason it didn't work out last time was that we didn't have evidence of an easement at one portion. And if he says that he's got, the old survey from where, when it clearly shows in the legal and on that survey that easement is there, that should satisfy it. So we'd ask that you get those to, if you can, get a copy to Mr. Woody, have our attorney look at it, and,
I'll call on Mrs. Campbell to help me.
yeah. Yeah, well, however we get it, but I think that's why it didn't work out last time. So if we've got that problem resolved, it'll probably go a long way toward solving it.
And Mr. Beasley, did you want to weigh in?
Mr. Perkins and Ms. Campbell kind of collectively beat me to it. We would need to order some title work. However, absent Ms. Campbell's generous offer, if Mr. Woodward has already procured the instruments, downloaded them, whatever, and could put together a package and help us with that, it would be more cost efficient, because it seems like he's already read the deed and all of those instruments. So whatever instruments he could provide that he's already done the groundwork on, reviewing those will be the starting place for us.
Well, this particular area is called at the courthouse Fisher's Subdivision. And you go to a point back on the Country Club Golf Course for a point at the beginning, and there is no plat. Or if there ever was a plat, it was never recorded. So that each of our units are meets and bounds descriptions, and they run about this long. So you go about a paragraph and a half before you ever start describing the actual piece of dirt.
Okay.
And this is not a condominium. I want you to understand, this is not a condominium. There is not a homeowners association. There are not any restrictive easements that I've ever found, or restricted covenants.
Thank you, Mr. Woodward. Ms. Campbell?
We may need the help of the homeowners at the end to make it work, but
Well,
sounds like they're happy to do that.
At this point in time, I can almost, without exception, tell you that every homeowner out there despises the trip around with the garbage can, and they're ready to do whatever's necessary to get it done.
And I need to recognize Mr. Stevens.
Madam Chair, so Mr. Woodward, you answered my question after I put my light on. You've got a consensus of everyone in the subdivision. I can't imagine one would have an issue.
Everybody.
Okay,
From, everything is owned by people who live there. So it's not one of these things where we have
gotta
absentee
go find a
owners.
renter and who owns the property, okay. So
That's
you physically or reached out to each one of these individuals in some form of communication and
Oh,
said,
yes.
this is our end goal, and are you in agreement with allowing ECUA to come back here with your truck?
They've been beating me about the head and shoulders for the last 90 days about where this stands.
Good enough.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, please, and the motion is for the staff to work out an arrangement, to look into the legal, et cetera. Okay, please vote. And it passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Woodward.
ma'am. Thank you.
And
all.
Ms. Bozeman, do you still want to speak? Okay, thank you. Thank you. The next person who wishes to address us is Dr. Andre Davis. Dr. Davis, where are you?
Good evening. I want to take this time out to say thank you to Ms. Benson for helping me get to this point. Yet I want this board to understand that I'm here facing a huge financial loss, and that loss is because of ECUA employees did not do or know their job. I'm not here to ask ECUA for any financial assistance of any kind. There's only three things I want you to think about. I'm going to give you the end first, and then I'll explain why I'm there. There's only three things I want you to do. The first thing I'd like for you to do is take responsibility for your part in this mess that I'm in. The second thing is I want you to use your influence and power with utility service businesses to assist me in getting the job done. And the last thing, I want you to make administrative changes to ensure that this type of situation doesn't occur or happen again. I, in turn, 9 months ago, came here when got a mission to build homes, economical, affordable homes. Started looking in different areas, looked in the Warrenton area, and also developing in the Inslee area. Bought one piece of plot of land in Inslee, and then bought a second piece out in Warrenton. In the Warrenton area, I wanted to put a total of 8 homes because I did not want to go through the RC and hit the what's called subdivision. I went to Horace Jones and asked him what could I do. I wasn't financially able at the time, so I'm doing it from my pocket, to do 8 homes. So he told me to do 4. I came here asking, as I always do, after being in the Marine Corps as a recon officer, I know how to dot the T's and cross. I came here, and I came to customer service, told them what I wanted to do, and they in turn told me I had to pay impact fees. Not one time did they explain to me that those land needed to have laterals and everything else. I paid those fees. So I paid for something you can't deliver because there is no lateral there. When I went back to Horace and to get my building permit, they said I had to have, in fact, let me back up. When the first time I came here looking for water. I knew nothing about people's water. I knew nothing about that. So I came here, and on the first day I came, they told me that they couldn't service. I had to get the water from Peoples. Never did they tell me I had to also get sewer. I could go ahead and pay for sewer here. So I went to Peoples. Peoples got there, paid for their impact, and then I asked for sewer, and they said, no, you got to go back to ECUA. So I came back here, and I paid that fee. Not one time did they tell me that was going to be a connect fee or any other fees. And as always, when I deal with things, I always ask 2 questions. Is there anything else I need to know? Is there anything else I need to do? Never was told that. Never. Now, all of a sudden, I got these homes, and they're right almost in the completion stage. And my first interest payment, because they've been done in 6 months, just about around the corner. And that's a huge payment that I didn't never expect to make because I expected to have the homes built and sold. I came and called. When I got out my plumber call, I was in the hospital for about a week and a half. I had a total knee replacement and had some complications. My plumber called and said he could not hook it up because there was no laterals. When I got out, I came here. And here's the problem I ran into. I came to customer service, and I spent over 3 hours right there in customer service. I kept asking to send me to engineering because I knew that's where I need to have the answers. But customer service kept telling me, let me look it up, let me look it up. When I came to pay the impact fee, they ran me around the corner because the first time when I gave them, they said they had to have addresses because it's listed as 1,000 block of Polk Avenue. They said they had to have address. I said, I've got address. Well, we can't take your word. You have to go down and get a letter and bring that letter back. So I went back down to addressing brought the letter back, paid the fees, gave them the addresses. Not one time anybody said, hey, you still don't have lateral. Let me look it up and see if there's a lateral there. 8 months later, I found out there's no lateral. Homes are almost ready to go. All I have to do now is put the brick and siding on, and I can start selling them. But I can't now because they can't put the pavement down to the driveway. They can't do the sidewalks. They can't do anything because they have to have the laterals. I came here Wednesday or Thursday this week, last week, trying to talk to them to get the engineering to find out, is that lateral there? If not, what can I do? They kept me in customer service for 3 hours. The first young lady came to me and said that she was looking, and I said, well, ma'am, I need to see engineering. Please, can I get the engineering? I said, I know I've been over here once before, this building here. I just need you to call over there and have somebody meet me at the door and let me in. We can't do that. That's not how we do it. You tell me what you want, then we call engineering, then the engineer tell us what we need to be done, and then we tell you. I said, why do we got to play that middleman thing? Let me go straight to engineering. So I then, after she diligently looked and everything, she then called her supervisor, a young lady named Trish, I believe it was. She came up, and I sat with her for over 30 minutes while she kept looking. Then finally, she read to me an email that she said she had received, that that she had received. I said, I never received the email. And she said, on that email, it stated that the customer had to do everything. Nobody ever sent that email. So I asked her for a copy of it. So since I'm going to be responsible for doing the action, let me see it so I know what action I need to take. I can't give it to you. This is an internal email. And then I said, well, how am I supposed to do what to do if I don't have some knowledge? So she kept looking, and she left. Went to the back. I don't know why they have a habit of always going to the back. They say they're going back to talk to somebody, and you sit up there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You don't know what's going on. You're just sitting there. So that's when I called Ms. Benson. And that's when Ms. Benson told me I need to go to engineer, come down to the Trillium, and ask for engineer and go up there. But before that, another young lady came out. But she said, Ms. Trish, it was her higher supervisor who would know more about it. She came out, and then she told me that she had called an email, and she wanted me to see somebody named Tommy Taylor or Brian Reed. Maybe they could help me. So I'm waiting. She said, let me call them. So we sat there, and they never called back. They never responded to an email. So finally, I just got tired. And I walked down here to the Trillium and came upstairs and met with your engineering department, who then told me the bad news, that out of all that property, I have only 3 laterals. Under the 4 houses I currently have in construction, I only have 1 lateral. So I started asking them, what can I do? How can I do this? And the only thing they say you can do is, you got to do it. To build those laterals, nobody has been able to tell me a price yet, but they're estimating will be probably between $10,000 and $15,000. I need 3. I really need a total of 4 to get all 8 houses. So if you're looking at that, at $15,000, that's $60,000. But that's not the end of the story. I came back here and bought these things, and I subdivided the lot and got a back lot. I have it here to show you. This is something I would never have done. I would never have had it resurveyed and put a back lot on if I'd been told by your customer service I would never be able to use that lot. I took 2 of the lots. You see them highlighted. I took 2 of the lots and cut some of the back off so I can make a lot. I want to make 8 houses there. I've been told now there's no way I'll ever be able to get service back there. But I've already paid another $1,300 to Empire to go ahead and subdivide it and put the legal description there. I've already paid the contractor to order equipment, framing, to send in the framing for it. But I won't ever be able to put anything there. And no one here ever told me, hey, Lamar Street has no service. You won't be able to get there. And then it's in, you may can get there if we put a grinding pump. If we put a grinding pump there, that's going to be another probably $10,000, $15,000 there. So now we're looking at $75,000 that I've got to come up with just to get the houses built. And the house is already 2/3 built. I'm sorry. I didn't spend 30 years in the Marine Corps. I didn't lose a son in the Gulf to come here and spend all this money and can't do anything with it. And that's what I'm facing now, because I'm not that liquid anymore to finish up $75,000. The thing that gets to me now, and the only thing I'm asking you to do, is I've talked to Mr. Stacy. He said that he would, first off, I'm not from here, so I know no utility company. I'm a novice in a fish pond I had no business probably getting into. I know no utility company, but he's told me now that when he sent out a bid and he had one person come back and say he wouldn't be able to do anything until August. I met with the insurance company this morning. I met with at the bank and the insurance company, and they have advised me that if a hurricane comes and those homes get damaged, I have no coverage, because they can't cover unless the houses are complete. So that means if I got 4 houses that's not covered, that if all of a sudden they go down, I lose over $700,000 I've already spent in material and everything on these homes. I've asked Mr. Stacy to do, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, I may be new to the development, but not new to the business. I have contacts and I have contracts with people that I call all the day long. I say, I need you to do this favor for me. I need you to go do this. I've been told that to do this job may take 1 to 2 days. I need ECUA to use your power that you use all the utilities companies you do multi-million-dollar business with, and just ask one, hey, I need you to help us out. I've got a young man over here that needs lateral, and he needs them right away. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking you to pay for them. I'm going to pay for them. But I need them to put them in so I can get these houses completed before maybe a hurricane or tropical storm comes and really totally destroy me and my family. I hate to think that I did 4 tours in the Gulf, 30 years in the Corps, only to lose all of this now. My son, I hope that his death in the Gulf wasn't in vain when he left his money for his son who's working with me to make this happen. I don't want to lose anything. And I think if Mr. Stacy or whoever does this would use the power of ECUA, I think you could get a utility company who will break away a day or two and put these laterals in. That's all I'm asking you to do. Except the other thing I'm asking you to do is train your staff so this won't happen again. And I know it will because I called here yesterday, just yesterday, talking about some property over in Inslee, 8541 Vicky. And I think the extension was 4. And as you say, you record things, go back and listen to your recording. I asked the lady, I said, look here, I need to find out how many laterals on this 8541 Inslee and at 8520 Inslee. She said, well, you have to call 811 and they'll come out and mark them. I said, ma'am, I don't need a mark. I need to know if there's a lateral there and how many. Well, 841, if you call that number, that 811, they'll tell you all of that. I said, no, they're not, ma'am. I know that much. They're not. I said, I need to get to engineering. Finally, after persistence, she took me to engineering. I talked to a young female up there in maps. And I told her the same thing. I was looking at 8541. Also, I wanted to find out a status report on what I talked to States and 2 other guys Friday. Well, we got disconnected some kind of way. I called her back. She said, well, I've already talked to Pete about 8541. He said that's only 1 lateral. I said, I don't need to talk about 8541. I need to talk about 1,000 pole. Oh, that's what you want. So there's a lot of miscommunication here that we keep running into, but it's costing. And right now, I'm looking at probably $100,000 cost, all because 8 months ago when I came and paid this impact fee, nobody took the time out to say, hey, there's no lateral there. Because 8 months ago, I probably could have got it done pretty quickly before everything, prices went up and work came on. I know I would have had it done by now, 8 months. But I'm just finding out here this Friday, that there is no lateral there. Now, I will say this. They met me out there this morning. Your staff did met me out this morning. We mapped out where the laterals are. I have 3, but I have 7 houses on the front. I need 4 for the front, and we still haven't confirmed that we can put a grinding pump on the backside. If we can't put the grinding pump on the backside, then I've got to pay another $1,300 to have Empire come back out and do another survey and take that backside lot and put it back as it were. Because it'd be wasteful for me to leave it like that when I can put it back to those 2 houses and hopefully make a difference in pace. That's all I'm asking of you.
And thank you, Dr. Davis, and Mr. Stevens, if you'll just stay there, but we'll give Mr. Stevens the floor.
Dr. Davison, first of all, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. So a few questions for you. So are you subbing this out to a general contractor?
Yes, I
I'm
do have
assuming
a
it's
general-
more than
my-
one house, so you're not
Yeah.
doing it yourself.
I have one, Myers Construction.
Okay, house construction. Because typically those, and I'm not, we're trying to help you resolve this situation, so this certainly isn't a finger pointing fest. But did the contractor, I guess, reach out to ECUA and confirm, laterals and was there available sewer and
I know you did, because when I started this process, we started looking at different contractors. Mine came to us. I physically went to met with Horace Jones and Terry Williams and Charles and Tim Dungan. Those are CBO down there. And so we did that. And when we did that, that's when we went through the process. Then I came out here and I just started walking it through. So no, he did not.
I mean,
And
'cause
that's
we've had
probably what
situations.
that was the first problem I did, when it should have been him.
Okay, yeah, because that's typically the job of the GC is to confirm all of that. I mean, typically, you're the investor, I'm looking at you as the investor, essentially subbing out to the general contractor to get this development built for you. And second thing is, so there's builder risk insurance, as an aside, there's builder risk insurance that you can get, that he can get as a builder, you can get as an investor to cover these houses until they're completed. So
We
I'd
do.
be happy to get you some contact information or email you or whatever, some contact information, just so you can get some coverage. I'm covering multiple things, but on these houses as we are about to enter hurricane season.
Yeah, well, I went through Synovus Bank, named Rick, the guy, Rick Melican. He's my banker. And we met with him this morning, my construction, myself, Bishop Young, Charles Young. We all met there this morning. And what he advised us was, we have insurance to cover everything else, but because we don't have we were already 45 days away from beginning of hurricane, they will not issue a policy.
Okay, and I've never heard of that. Like I said, the only time you're precluded from insurance typically is there's an active hurricane in the Gulf, and then there's so many days before they can bind coverage. So typically, Again, I'd be happy to shoot you some information
I would
on my
appreciate
insurance
that, because-
agent, or a few that we've used in the past, that they specialize in builder risk, just to get you some coverage as we enter hurricane season, because once one is noted in the Gulf, then you can't. And then you're asking for us to give you some help to recommend, I'm assuming, a private contractor to install your laterals, or are you asking ECUA to
No.
install?
I've been told by Mr. Stacy that ECUA could not install them. They don't have the equipment to do that. They will have the, no, all I'm asking you to do, and I don't know how to say this nicely, so I just say it the way I would say it if I was doing it. I'm asking you to call on somebody who you do business with, that you've done multi-million-dollar contracts with, and say, hey, John, I need you to do me a favor. I've got this young man over here. Your power is more important than if he just called John and said, John, I've got this young man who, he needs some lateral. Will you do that for him? I'm nobody. But you, multi-million-dollar contracts, they probably move faster. I know in things I've done, I've got faster than them. I'll give you an example. Just the other day, Inslee Septic Tank, I do a lot of work with them, and especially in the Inslee area, because I've got a lot of septic tanks out there. They told me they were booked all the way up until June before they could get me another septic tank. But when I called Kim, one of the owners, I got it done 2 days later. Because and I asked her why she did it. She said it clearly, clear word. Dr. Davis, you're one of our best customers. We've done a lot of business with you, so I'm gonna make sure you get what you need.
Sure.
That's the power you have when you spend money.
Sure, absolutely, and that's a septic company, so you're gonna be looking more for a plumbing company.
I'm looking for whoever does
than
laterals.
Inslee, and so, but anyway, I would just, and you've reached out to plumbing contractors, and no one,
I have not reached out to any.
okay.
Mr. Stacy
Because this
said
wouldn't
it-
be a septic,
No,
I
I'm
don't know
not
if this
looking
would
for- I'm just
fall
using-
under the purview of a septic company's license, it would be plumbing, okay.
No, I'm just using that as an example, that in turn, because I do so much business with Inslee, I can call on them, they'll make special favors for me.
Sure.
And I'm saying that's the same thing, ECUA had the same power. And I'm asking you to use that power to call on the utilities that you normally do business with and ask them to please help me as quickly as possible, rather than having me sit here to August.
Sure, and I'm just trying to figure out, again, how this, like, who did not get you all the correct information on, so you weren't told you had laterals out there, you weren't told you had them, you weren't told you didn't have them, you just,
when I paid
you
it-
assumed,
No, I didn't assume
We
anything.
just-
I came here.
Okay.
That's one thing I don't do, assume.
yes, sir,
I came here, and when I came here, I specifically asked, what did I need to do to get service at that lot. The first time I came here, they told me they didn't even service that. Water came, they didn't even say anything about sewer, they said water. So they sent me to Peoples. When I got to Peoples, I got the same thing I asked them, how much is it gonna cost me to get water and sewer? Then they told me that the sewer had to come from here. I came back here the very next day, and then they told me I had to pay this fee, but they couldn't do it unless I brought addresses in, because it was 1,000 block. So I went back. It took me 3 days just to pay you for impact. When I paid that impact, not one time did anybody say, let's check and see if there's a lateral. I knew nothing about lateral.
and that's really where that general contractor comes into the space here, is it's really incumbent upon them, I'm not faulting you in any way, sir, it's really incumbent upon the general contractor to make sure that they've got sewer, in this case.
I agree with that, but I also agree with
to-
this. Your people should have known. I mean, that's what customer service is there for. The guy, if customer service don't know, that when I told them what I was doing, why couldn't customer service call up the engineer and say, look here, we need to check? Because remember, they send a service, well, I've been told now, the way it works, they were supposed to call the engineer and send a service ticket up there so they can do a connect fee. I asked them what other fees I had to pay. They didn't even say I had another connect fee to pay.
So, Dr. Davis, we hear you, and so just, unless there's a direct question,
Okay.
just.
Yeah,
because- all right.
And that's really, so Dr. Davis, first of all, I'll get your contact information, I'll send you some information for some insurance companies. God forbid you had to get this lot resurveyed, Empire shouldn't charge you.
Oh, yes, it will.
I know they'll charge you for it, I'm just saying at points there, so I can certainly send you some contact information, hopefully to facilitate, you getting sewer here. I'm just trying to, like you said, I'm trying to figure out where the breakdown happened, if it were, partly on our end, if that were the case, and how we can, correct that, moving forward, and then also hopefully give you some information that will help you, get this, situation resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Ms. Campbell?
Well, I was gonna say, I agree, the general contractor usually gets the sewer information and the lateral information, so it doesn't normally, we don't normally go through the customer service, so I think that's where the beginning issue started. And we and we are the ones that told Mr. Hayden, not, that's a board thing of us telling them not to give out names of plumbers, because we don't want one plumber to think that we're giving out, names of another plumber, and it's not really our job to do that, to give names. So that's not Mr. Stacy Hayden's fault, that's our fault. We tell them not to give out names. But it would be a plumber, I think, that you're gonna need. And I'm the one, you called me first, I think.
I did.
Yeah.
Hey, the reason I called you, because the customer service told me you were the one that had
That's
that
right.
area.
And I went straight to admin and told them that customer services tells a lot of people that I'm the district rep for District Two, and I gave you Miss Benson's number, but I appreciate you coming here today. And I'm sorry this happened, but it does sound to me like it's a general contractor that should have come to ECUA and got the plans for the sewer and the connections. So I think maybe staff can, all we can do now is maybe help you find a plumber, and I hear him down there saying he'll help you do that, Mr. Stevens, so, and then insurance. And he is right about the builder risk insurance as well. You can get builder risk insurance on a house when you're building it. And then the only time a hurricane comes into play is if it gets into the Gulf. And then they won't write insurance.
Well,
So I think they'll write it right now, so.
The thing I'm concerned about, if I can get the laterals, I can get the house built in 2 weeks. I mean, that's how far along I am. All I need is those laterals. And the contractor told me this morning, he told it to the bank this morning when we were sitting there with Rick, that if he gets the laterals in, he can have the job completed within 2 to 3 weeks. So, I mean, that's all I need. I just need somebody to come in. I'm not actually paying the money. I'll pay the money. Just get me a contractor that can do it.
And if I might continue, I feel your pain on the contractor thing. I ordered and paid for windows in November. And here it is May, and I still don't have windows. This is a supply chain issue, and there's really not much we can do about the fact that every plumber in town is probably backed up till August. I don't know that we can twist a arm, but he might can.
Yeah.
He's got a building company, so he might can twist an arm for you.
And I will accept the responsibility, Ms. Benson, in that in turn, I did this on my own. I'm a jawhead. And I wanted to find out and do it, but I've built 4 other homes right here in Inslee. They did the same thing they did now. I didn't have these problems. In fact, on Vicky Street, I had to put 2 laterals there. And when I came to customer service, Gabe was the one who worked through with me. You can talk to him. I see him in the audience, and he knows about those houses. And I had to put 2 on Dauphine Street. So we've done it.
Dr. Davis, we have a queue. So let me recognize Mr. Woody right now.
Mr. Davis, I certainly apologize for frustrations and challenges that you're facing at the end of your building construction. We strive to be sure that we can provide as much information to avoid problems when we can. It adds an extra twist when you're doing a minor subdivision rather than a major subdivision, because the process at the county is a little shorter that way in terms of the review of utilities. But on our end, we try to do our best to communicate to all of our applicants. And one of the things that we use is we have a form that identifies and states what the new water sewer service fees and application form really entails. I actually have a copy of the ones that you signed for 1000 Polk Avenue, 1002 Polk Avenue, and 1004 Polk Avenue. And we try to, putting in writing is one thing, explaining it, be sure that everybody understands is another, and that's probably maybe where the disconnect comes. But to our staff's credit, we do try to make that evident. And I'll read a section of that form. It says, if there is not a water service line or sewer service lateral already installed on the property, then one must be installed at the customer's expense. A customer can pay a connection fee, and the ECUA will connect the services, or the customer can hire an appropriate licensed contractor to connect those services, and ECUA will inspect the connection. And it goes on to describe how those options are run. Much as Mr. Stevens just a moment ago said, the general contractor from our perspective, has a couple different responsibilities, three that I'd like to particularly point out. One, to confirm the availability of sewer. Just looking at a map and finding out whether there's a gray line running past may tell you that sewer is within the bounds of the property. That's kind of the availability question. But the next question beyond that is suitability. Is it, if you're wanting to have a gravity connection, is it gravity sewer service that's available as opposed to a force main? Is it an appropriate depth to serve the first floor elevation of the building that you're constructing? Is it of the type that you connect? If you have a gravity sewer service, you can't connect to a force main, or vice versa, those sorts of things. And then lastly, as a businessman, of course, wanting to make a financial decision on your commitment before you start pulling all your permits and hiring all your contracts, certainly knowing how much it's going to cost to make that connection. It's much less if it's on your side of the street and the lateral's already there, but much more expensive if it's clear on the other side of the street, or the main may be there, but the lateral isn't. And I think the issue here is that the lateral in some of those houses aren't there. So I would say that I appreciate Stacy Hayden stepping out and taking the extra step in saying that we'll try to help and make some contacts and try to get some bids to help you, in addition to whatever actions you're also taking on your own behalf, so that we can hopefully put together some options for you to go together as quickly as we possibly can. But we are a public entity rather than a private one, so we can't use influence or the fact that we are obviously a multi-million-dollar operation. Can't use that influence as a public entity to request a plumber to give special preference or deference, because we're a public entity. But we'll continue to do that and answer as many questions as we can, continue to help you try to find plumbers and to help solve that problem as best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Mr. Williams.
Being new at this, thank you, Madam Chair. What did he pay for? The impact fees, what did he pay for?
Mr. Woody, you may respond.
Mr. Woody?
He paid for the sewer impact fee, an amount of $1,602 for each of 3 addresses. That's the impact fee, but that's not the connection. If the lateral was already there and he was ready to connect, then he would just hire his plumber and do the connection. If the lateral isn't there, then he either has to hire a plumber to make that connection, or if he chooses to, he can do that through us. And that's just a pass-through cost where we then procure that service.
Okay. So no time during that process, do we know when he pays for sewer that there is no laterals? I mean, is that policy or custom to inform or not inform the person that we don't have laterals here? You're gonna have to find you a plumber, or that we do have laterals here and ECUA can connect you? Is that not part of the process?
Mr. Woody?
We have a fairly extensive mapping system, but it is imperfect. Our geographic information system contains information that we've gathered very recently, is very current, and is very accurate, as well as having inherited paper, mylar, handwritten drawings that are decades and decades old. We update that information as we find it out, but because it is an imperfect system, whenever we hand out and pass out that information, we actually even put a stamp specifically on the map that identifies the fact that a lot of this information needs to be field verified. And while I would generally say that our information on our mains and distribution system is the better of the data that we have available, the bits and pieces of information that we have that is probably of even lesser quality is connections of laterals, their location, their material type. They may have been marked as to be constructed at the time, but they never were installed. Lots of things happened decades and decades ago, and we don't have precise information on all of that. That's part of good due diligence associated with purchasing property and identifying costs before you proceed on a project.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
So who is responsible within ECUA to inform him after he pay, him or her, whoever the person may be, after they pay an impact fee, of having laterals or not having laterals? Is that a customer service responsibility, or should that be told to him or her by somebody else?
Mr. Woody?
We share the information they have available at the time. Then we'll often request either the assistance of engineering or sometimes even our field services, depending on who has the best information. I'm a little bit out of my element. I'd be a little hesitant to say much beyond that. I might ask for either Stacy or Brian to add some additional information. I know we just have done some TV inspection and things like that to help find things, but
I guess because my bottom line is, I don't think the process worked. And I'm trying to figure out why didn't it work better for the customer if initially he pays money, then he shouldn't run into, I think he shouldn't come to ECUA with the problem, thinking ECUA has something to do with the problem. If our due diligence informed him that this is what you get for what you pay for, now go forward to complete your task based upon what you need to finish your job. And I don't think he was aware of that completely when he paid his impact fee, nor was he clear on who was supposed to provide the services, whether it was customer service or engineering. And I'm not totally clear on who's supposed to provide answers to what services ECUA provides once you pay your impact fee. I'm not clear on what is told to the customer after they pay, so that they know what they have to do next to continue on in their process of completing their job or their building or whatever they're doing. So if that process could just be clear to me, then when somebody else comes to the podium, I will know who's supposed to do what, and if it's not done, then I'll know whose responsibility it is to, or where the responsibility lies for what wasn't done. So can you just amplify on how the process works, who should do what, and in the future at least, it'll be done in such a way that we all know.
And Mr. Woody?
and that's all I have. Thank you.
Did you want Mr. Woody?
I
to
do.
respond? Yeah.
But that's all right.
Again, at the time that, in this particular case, at the time that the permits were issued, what was paid for was the sewer impact fee. There was no fee associated with the lateral, because the builder has the option of either installing that him or herself, or hiring it done through ECUA. There is a certain amount of due diligence on the part of the builder in determining that the lateral exists in a location where they can access it. It's at the depth available to serve the property, depending on what the first floor elevations, lots of those sorts of things. Those are not activities that we provide on each property for each individual building lot. We will help answer questions, do some investigation if we have questions, but it's not a service we go out to every single property and provide. That's a certain amount of due diligence has to be done by the property owner. Same thing would apply for gas service, electric service, other sorts of things too. There may be an electric line in the back, but is it three-phase they want when instead it's only one phase, as an example.
So if we had another novice, Madam Chair, if we had another novice of a builder come up, this same situation could perhaps happen again, and they come back to ECUA because they didn't know, and we couldn't better say, it's not our job to inform you of what you don't know when you start. I mean, even after they pay money, I just that lateral part, not being there on the property, I'm thinking that's information in our documents, in our drawings. We should be able to inform whoever pays a fee. And I see we had other questions and other commenters, but that's the part that's just not clear to me. I think he's acknowledged his lack of experience in the process, but I don't know if it's clear to me how we can help the next person.
I think I can help.
Let me go to Mr. Beasley first, and then I'll
Okay.
let you respond, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Beasley?
I just wanted to make sure I the circumstances of this are framed properly due to some of the questions and concerns, and maybe Mr. Hayden can shed some light on it. My understanding, and I've reviewed the file, is that this is a parcel of property that did not have laterals because it was being subdivided as a commercial endeavor by a developer for profit. So someone engaged in an effort to buy property and split it up and develop it. My concern is that there was a sewer lateral, there wasn't sufficient number of sewer laterals to service the number of lots the developer intended to subdivide. And my concern about this is that some utilities, and this is what I propose the board to consider, some utilities do have a developer services type customer service aspect in which someone who would be knowledgeable in how to do a development and the checks and balances of a development. But that is not the type of customer service that I believe our customer service provides, which is how you pay your bill and those type of things. And so what we're talking about is, I think to properly frame it is whether or not there needs to be or should be, or is it caused to be a developer services contact versus a customer service contact. I just want to make sure we're all clear on what's happening here is the question is the ECUA, does it have adequate resources to take a person who wants to be a developer but doesn't really know how to be a developer because they don't know about how to provide these questions of, do I need sewer for my lots? And then work them through that process. Because what the number of laterals needed would be dependent on the developer's intended plan. And so I think that's where we are, and I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Ms. Campbell?
I love that you said that because I feel your pain, absolutely. But I also understand where customer service was coming in because I'm looking at the property on the tax roll, and as of November of last year, this wasn't 3 lots. It was 1 lot, and it probably had 1 lateral. And so as far as she wouldn't know that it didn't have a lateral. He was given a piece of paper that said, you have to put in a lateral. The customer was given a piece of paper that said, if there's not a lateral there, then you will have to go get a lateral. And so normally what happens is that goes to the builder's representative or the contractor. And so in this instance, the contractor didn't pick up that information, right? Am I correct, Mr. Woody? So the contractor didn't pick up the information, the customer did, and didn't realize what to do, that they had to put in the lateral. So I think you're right, it would be nice if we had one person in, because it probably doesn't happen a lot, it's never happened since I've been here, but maybe once or twice, but if we had a person in that knew a little bit more about building, and this could have been gone to them and not to just a customer service person, so.
Ms. Benson,
Yeah.
I just say one thing and finalize, so, because that seemed to be a across this whole board. First off, that property has lots. If you look at the legal description of the property, it has lots 6, 7, and 8. If you look at the rule, it says that each lot is entitled to have a lateral, a sewer. So when I bought the property, I bought it with the intent of lots 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That meant that I should have 6 laterals because I got 6 lots. Each lot is entitled to service. Now, I went to your building department, planning department, and DRC. I didn't go through the DRC process, but I talked to the DRC people. And they're the ones who told me that because there's a lot, it should have service. Now, when you came and redid the plots out there, because it was one big open spot, they elected only to put 1 lateral at the first piece of property, and they put 2 laterals at the second piece of property because it had lots 7, 8, and 9. So in turn, I did my homework. The problem was, I'm going to tell you what the problem was. When I came to customer service and paid the impact fees, I asked that question. Is there anything else I need to do to get service to this place? And customer service said, no. How you solve this? Simply by, when you come there, it's a new development, it's a new piece of property, customer service said you need to go up to engineering. It's the same thing that happened when I went to Gulf Power, or Florida Power. They, in turn, had to put new poles out there. I had to bring in new poles, new electrical. I asked them the same question, and they said, well, because you got that many houses coming there, even though you're going to be a year or 2 finishing out, we need to put some more poles there. This is what it's going to cost you. And I brought in a company who put the poles and everything up. So I asked the same question at the same utilities and got 2 different things. So I think the situation is that when your customer service asks that question, and they still don't know, they're still leading in the wrong direction. It's go to engineering. And because when you go downtown, these are different lots, and the way the rule is, each lot was entitled to a lateral. But then when they made it, because it was a wide open spot, they just simply gave it one.
You know, and if I may say something, I think probably what is happening is, there many things have happened, but for the most part, Mr. Stevens is correct. When people come in to develop lots, you have a contractor who knows the process, who gets it. And for the most part, that's what we're accustomed to. But we ought to recognize that there are times that you have somebody who is not a building professional. And we ought to have a contingency for that. I mean, I acted as my own contractor in building my house. I was not knowledgeable about things like that. And there are other people, such as Dr. Davis, who is in development, who is not professional. So it would be probably valuable if we had someone in customer service who was particularly studied in these issues for when we get someone in who is not a professional developer historically, so that the other customer service people could say, oh, you need to talk to Mrs. Jones about that because she can help you walk through this. And we probably ought to have a simple piece of paper that says, these are questions you should ask, just for those times. I think that would be very user-friendly, and it may have saved Dr. Davis some process. I don't think anybody did anything wrong. It's just we didn't contemplate that kind of, our processes are driven a certain way by contractors who do this. But maybe we need to broaden our thinking so that we're more customer friendly. I don't think anybody meant to mislead Dr. Davis in this. They probably made some assumptions that he had done this before and knew the process. So I would hope we would look at this, and this is not a criticism of customer service or engineering or anybody. It was, how do we take this information and make ourselves better and more responsible? Because building is happening a lot, and we need to flex and grow so that we respond to what's happening today. It's just like Dr. Davis can't get a plumber. Right, join the club. It's the construction right now is crazy. You can't get materials, you can't get subs. So he's sort of in a perfect storm. He got caught at the end of something that theoretically he should have known earlier, but here he is now in that crunch. Anyway, I've said my piece, and I'm sorry you encountered this. This is a very customer-friendly organization that is getting more so, I think. And I hate to learn a lesson on your back, but I think maybe we have. Mr. Stevens, I apologize for butting in.
Well, and you stole my thunder, Chairman
well.
Campbell. So just to reiterate what Chairman Campbell said, we're not going to beleaguer the point of, the onus really falls on the contractor and the developer to know all this stuff. We're past that. I think we've done that on solutions. I'd like to address Board Member Williams' question as well as Chairman Campbell's is how do we fix this going forward? For the novice developer or the novice builder, and is there a way? And this is just something, I guess, as board members we can think about, as well as Director Woody, is when you issue that impact fee, when you're charging someone for an impact fee, is there a way to cross-reference our maps? And again, knowing that they are very antiquated, and we have to put that disclaimer on there, certain restrictions apply, see store for details, on there, that we're not liable to it. But before we issue that impact fee, is there a checklist we can do on our end, certainly as the builder and developer? They would have already done that, by the way, to make sure before they even moved dirt that there was laterals there. But nonetheless, for us to look at our end and say, okay, well, I'm going to issue, seven impact fee charges, and we're going to can we confirm on our end there is in fact lateral there? Punch, and we may not be that sophisticated yet, but that would have probably solved this if our systems were set up that way, which I'm thinking they are not currently set up to where we can confirm at a glance, 100% of the time, I know sometimes we can, that the impact fees that we issued for said lots all have laterals. So that's something we can probably ponder and come up with a resolution on our end. And then just in closing, I'll be happy to provide you some information on multiple subs covering multiple fees, and you, because we cannot recommend or, as Director Woody said, any particular sub, because we're a public entity, but I'd be certainly happy to provide you multiple referrals for multiple companies that you can contact, and hopefully they can give you some assistance as well as the builder's risk insurance contact to get some insurance on this.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Ms. Campbell?
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe a builder liaison type person in customer service that we can send people to when they get to when they get to the point that they know they're dealing with more than one lateral. But I'd like to say thank you for building some affordable housing in this area. I know where this is and we need it badly, so
Yeah,
thank
I may
you.
be living in it.
I promise you won't have any trouble selling those houses once you get them on the market, so that's the good news. And I'm sorry that we learned a lesson on your back, like Ms. Vincent said, but, and I think I'm glad you came today.
I want to say, I'm not angry, I'm not mad.
Oh, I know, and I
I'm not
appreciate
mad, I'm not angry, I'm not here to blame anybody.
Okay.
It is what it is, let's solve it, that's all I want.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, I sat and listened to all this, and I can't help but think what we were talking about in our budget discussion just a week or two ago, how how a lot of times we have this bureaucracy and there's a lack of a sense of urgency, and that causes problems for people. And it's not, and we have, so we're hiring another engineer, and we're going to try and work, toward providing more service there, and help expedite, kind of an expediter, hopefully. But and so budgetarily, we need to look at that. But I couldn't agree more with what our attorney said, is that, customer service is not capable or equipped to provide development assistance. That's not their job. That's not their forte. The people we hire for that don't have those capabilities and those technical, know-hows. And so, rather they come in, they pay the impact fees. Now, we can collect the impact fees in customer service. That's reasonable to expect. But then what we need to do is march them over to engineering. It shouldn't take 3 hours. It should be, now you got to go to engineering to do this. And we have a crisis of affordable housing in this area, and part of the reason is what we're seeing right here. Now, a big part of it is the economy and the market. There are a lot of other reasons, but in this area for a long time, and it's not a problem for big developers who have, a staff with attorneys and engineers and stuff like that. It's not a problem for them. They know how to do this. They go right through it. It's not a problem for them. Where we have a problem in providing affordable housing, and where we have a problem in providing, decent development services, is in the small property owner, somebody that owns their own property and wants to add a few units to it, or a small first-time developer like this. And I had over in Ferry Pass, a couple of years back, a property where I had a couple of units on it, and I could add a couple more units. So I'm like, yeah, the market's good. I'm going to do that. I've got a little money saved up, and so it makes sense for me. So I started doing the dance, and you got to go here and get addresses and do that. So I did that. And, you got to add a little dirt, and all this, and you got to get this permit and that permit, and then ECUA, you got to pay these impact fees. And I'm like, okay, so never having done this before, it's confusing, and I'm fairly educated. It's not a simple thing. I mean, 30 years in the Marines, you learn some stuff. You learn how to think. It's not that you can't think. It's just complicated and bureaucratic, and a lot of times nobody wants to really take responsibility or help somebody. And so I'm hoping that that we can have like a development liaison or somebody in the engineering department, an intern that walks people through this process. And so what happened with my situation is by the time I figured out what the impact fees were gonna be, which were, reasonable. I'm gonna impact the system, I don't have a problem with that. But then I've gotta add new laterals and new connections. And I'm like, well, for what I've envisioned, I would, as a property owner, be glad to pay the utilities, the monthly water and sewer and garbage as part of, what I rent these out for. Can't we just put them in the current sewer? Put water meters in and not have a sewer lateral and just go with the current sewer? Oh, no, we can't do that. Well, why not? Well, we just decided a few years back not to do that. I never voted on that. I don't remember us ever doing that. But I think we, as a staff, or the engineering manual, or whatever, decided that each one, whether the private property owner wants that or not, has to have an individual, sewer lateral. And so that discouraged me as a small property owner from adding 2 more units. Now, it's not a lot of units, but it's 2 more units that would have been affordable. It was in an affordable area. Ferry Pass is not Beverly Hills, but it's decent, safe area. And so it kept me from putting in those 2 units. I ended up selling the property. The guy I sold it to is not the most industrious in the world, so he's let one of them deteriorate, so it's not even rentable anymore. So we lost the property. And so I think we can do more on the small scale stuff to help. And I'm hoping that as we further discuss our budget and we look at those goals and responsibilities for each department, including engineering, we identify somebody who is responsible for helping these small property owners and small developers to just walk them through the process and let them know what they need to do. And it is complicated, because the county handles certain things and ECUA handles certain things, People's Water. I mean, it's not easy. But if there was somebody in the office who could just meet with these people for half an hour after they pay their impact fees, have a checklist, this is everything that needs to be done, that's what it's going to get cost. We wouldn't end up in a crisis situation like I talked about last week during budget hearings, that you're going to have people come in here that have a payment due that can't make the payment because they've been extended financially because we haven't it hasn't been relayed to them because we haven't done everything we need to do to help them expedite the process. So I'm like everybody else. I'm not saying any blame. The real blame is with the general contractor. It sounds like should have really made sure all this happened. But a lot of people, small property owners that may have inherited some property with the family house and want to put 7 or 8 houses on it and provide for their families in the future, don't have a clue on what all is needed, and we really could be better at that, and it would help us as an organization. It would help us get those impact fees. It would help us get the laterals quicker, and we wouldn't end up in situations like this. So I hope that as we that we can learn from this. We do a lot of things real well. Some things we need improvement on. I think this is an area, with small private property owners and first-time developers that we need a little improvement on. And we're not subsidizing them. We're not doing any of their work for them, but we're just being clear about what's needed and what's expected. And I hope that we can, in that budget and in those goals, figure out how to do that rather than have somebody sitting over in customer service talking to someone who has no clue about development for 3 hours before they even get to figure out where the engineering building is. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Wood?
Yeah, my closing comment, we actually have staff in engineering who work with development staff over at the county, and this process works fairly smoothly for major subdivisions. I see this as an example of a problem that we can help reduce the occurrence of in 2 ways. Number one, to try to impress upon and work with the county to get us involved with minor subdivisions as well as major subdivisions. Those are lots that are just existing lots that are divided into fewer lots, which creates problems like these. Because when the sewers were installed, that was when it was in a different configuration, not configured as to how it's proposed to be configured after the minor subdivision. And then twofold, to work and train our customer service to look for these types of situations, so that if they get bias at the county level, hopefully when permits and things like that are pulled, they can say, hey, this is a different animal, you need to speak with Pete upstairs, who works also with other developments. So that would be kind of a checks and balances. We'll work on that.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Ms. Campbell?
And we're not the only ones feeling this pain. I just happen to know because we do a lot of lot split searches for Walton County, and they're, every day, they're happening. And so this kind of thing is happening every day over there, and I'm just happy to see that we're building some in Beach Haven where we just spread that new sewer and somebody's gonna be using it.
Okay, we don't have a motion on this. Okay, well, I think the directive is very clear. I think the 5 board members concur, and Mr. Woody heard us, and come again in a year, and maybe your experience will be different, Dr. Davis. But good luck with your project. Okay, we've made it through open forum. We come now to Recycle Star, and I've asked Mr. Perkins to pull out the winner of this week. By the way, I saw on the website recognition from last month's winner of Recycle Star, so I was glad to see that.
Number 4.
Number 4 is Kenneth Venezie. So, Mr. Venezie, congratulations. You will get all of the applause and awards and recognition. And the other people who are worthy of recognition include Alexis Dickey, Ms. Andy Schutt and Larry Legg, Debbie Bossum, Anthony MacArthur, George and Betty Bennett, Laquandra Mosley, Ernestine Tomasoni, Deborah Bowen, Wendell Lawrence, Kenneth Shaw, Laurie Tackett, Adrian Smiley, Lena Murphy, Jackie Van Pelt, Cheryl Stone, Jennifer Pease, Larry Rowe, Sylvia Sims, Pamela Robb Dewhurst, Jeff Eddy, Barbara Murray, Iris Ingram, Lacey McShane, and Anthony Ross. Thank you to all of these people and all the other people who are making this a more beautiful, clean community. Okay, we come now to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of April 27th. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes? Ms. Campbell?
Motion to approve?
It's been moved to approve. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Please vote. And it passes 5-0. The next item is the report of the Special ECUA Advisory Committee of May 11th, 2021. Ms. Campbell, you're recognized.
The ECUA Advisory Committee met on Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 at 2 p.m. All were present with the exception of Ms. Murphy, and we discussed the fiscal year, item E, fiscal year 2022 operating budget, and departments discussed were Mr. Woody with administration, Mr. Justin Smith with finance, Mr. John Dane with information technology, Ms. Kim Scruggs with human resources, Mr. Randy Rudd with shared services, and Mr. Gabe Brown with customer service. Mr. Hayden, director of engineering, was due. However, time restraints prohibited him. He helped me with the HOA that night, and he was moved to the May 18th. And that was that committee. And then May 18th, 2021, 2 p.m., the advisory committee met, and all were present. And the following departments gave their budget 2022 operating budget discussion. Mr. Jerry Piscopo with maintenance and construction, Mr. Stacy Hayden with engineering, Mr. Brian Reed with regional services, Mr. Randy Sears with water reclamation, Mr. Tom Dawson with water production, and Mr. Randy Rudd with sanitation and the MRF. And we discussed the capital improvement projects. The item G was a consent agenda for adoption of General Resolution GR 21-29, a general resolution to authorize a proposal of engineering services by Constantine Engineering Group in the amount of $489,798 for planning and zoning and design efforts related to the construction of a transfer station on the ECUA property off Pine Forest Road. Item 2 was adoption of General Resolution number GR 21-30, a general resolution authorizing existence of capital improvement project R1701, cleaning and television inspection of sanitary sewer annual contract with Gulf Coast Underground LLC. for cleaning and televising inspection of sanitary sewers and providing an effective date. Item 3 was adoption of General Resolution Number GR 21-31, a general resolution authorizing the extension of Capital Improvement Project 1705 cured-in-place pipe sanitary sewer rehabilitation annual contract with Hinterland Group Incorporated and providing an effective date. Item 4, adoption of General Resolution Number GR 21-32, a general resolution authorizing the extension of CIP Project R 1704 sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation annual contract with BLD Services LLC for sanitary sewer manhole rehabilitation and providing an effective date. Item 5 was adoption of General Resolution Number GR 21-33, a general resolution authorizing the executive director to execute renewal agreements with Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, Aetna, MetLife, WageWorks, and the Standard Insurance Company to renew group insurance benefits coverage with an effective date of October 1st, 2021. Recommendation motion was made by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Benson. The board adopt the GR General Resolutions GR 21-29 through GR 21-33, and the committee voted 11-0 in favor. I would like to move item G, consent order, for approval.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Mr. Williams,
Second.
any further comments, questions? Not, please vote. And it passes 5-0. Ms. Campbell, you may continue.
That concludes my report.
Oh, don't you have another? Weren't there two CAC?
Pardon me?
You have a second one,
I did them both.
oh, you hit them both,
Yes.
sorry, I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the first one was just discussion of
Right.
budget.
Okay. All right. Before we go to the consent agenda, I want to pause for just a minute, and I ask your indulgence. I had an email before I came into this meeting, and after all of the discussion, I just want to read this to you. It says, "Dear Ms. Benson, after Hurricane Sally, we had to cut down 8 trees in our backyard that were hanging over our house. It was November before we could arrange for removal. In December, we went to Floral Tree Gardens to see about replacing the trees during the spring growing season. We selected a little gem magnolia and 2 China Girl holly trees. We were told that the best time to plant them would be December and that they would need to be watered for 20 minutes every other day until new growth started showing. I called the ECUA because I knew that we would be watering during the sewer averaging time. I received my May bill, and the sewer cost had gone from $31.53 to $59.23. As you can imagine, I was so surprised. Since I had already called months ago, I thought that there was nothing to do. I let the bill sit on my desk for days, and today finally decided that I would call again and see if there was anything that could be done to address the almost $28 additional costs. I was so pleasantly surprised when LaShonda, she did not give me her last name, listened and looked back in my records to see that I had phoned. Without any bureaucratic speak, she indicated that I had called and informed ECUA about my trees and that I should simply continue to pay my bill of $65.07. LaShonda was polite, professional, and articulate. I did want someone to know how helpful she was and how she handled the problem I had with such professionalism. Thank you for your time." I get a lot of these, and I'm sure you all do too, but sometimes when we have these discussions, I feel like staff feels like we are critical of them, and I don't want that to be the pervasive message, because our employees do so much that's right, and we just need to hear about that. Anyway, thank you for indulging me. The next item is item 10A, the consent agenda. It's item A, the adoption of General Resolution GR 21-34, General Resolution recognizing insurance proceeds received, authorizing the executive director to execute a budget amendment to increase revenue and capital equipment expenditures and providing an effective date. Item 10B is a general resolution authorizing the acceptance of bid from Gulf Coast Underground LLC for CIP project RS0007, Carpenter Creek Trunk Main Rehabilitation, Phase 1, in the amount of $1,015,943.19, and authorizing the transfer of project funds. Let's see. Item C is a general resolution number GR 2136, a general resolution authorizing the acceptance of bid and awarding contract, authorizing the executive director to execute contract with Coastal Machinery Company of Pensacola and the amount of $67,500,000, $512.91. You have a million here, a million there, it's like money, right? For replacement forklift and providing an effective date. And I certainly don't mean to be flippant about our ratepayers' money. Item 10D is ECUA General Resolution GR 21-37, a general resolution authorizing the extension of the sole source contract with ADS LLC for continued long-term flow and rain monitoring systems data collection, analysis, operations, and maintenance, and providing an effective date. And that is all of the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull anything out for review independently? Mr. Perkins?
I'll move the consent agenda.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
A second.
Been moved and second. Any further discussion? Mr. Perkins?
Well, I just had a question on this Carpenter Creek rehab, we've got cracks and problems and stuff, and we're fixing it and rehabbing this sewer. And we have this, we're helping with I&I, and we have this DEP mandate that we do 8 million this year and so much every next year. Does this project credit toward that? I mean, is it part of that I&I mandate? And if not, how can we get it to be?
I think Mr. Hayden's coming to the podium. Mr. Hayden, you're recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. In short, right now, this project does not apply toward that corrective action plan. If you recall, we had over $400 million of projects for the corrective action plan originally, which included the rehabilitation of this Carpenter's Creek trunk main. There were other projects that became a higher priority than that one, than that project, and so we whittled it down to roughly $100 million worth of sewer rehab projects over 10 years. We can see if we can get credit for this. That'll have to be considered against other priority projects in the corrective action plan, and DEP will have to give its blessing. But we can certainly try that. And
well, can we at least take a look at it, because I mean it seems like it's fairly urgent, and we're doing phases, and it may be that there are other things in there now. Things change over time a little bit. It may be that there are things in there now that we can look at and say to DEP, hey, this makes more sense for us. We're spending the money now. Can we apply it?
yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, we can certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Since you're talking, Ms. Hayden, question is, how do we discover the defect? I mean, I should have pulled this, but there was a question. How do we discover the defect?
Mr. Hayden?
Madam Chairman, so back, I want to say it's about a year ago now, roughly a year ago, there was a major break in that sewer main. We had an emergency repair to that project, and, that was one thing that led us to put this higher on the priority list and go ahead and get it rehabbed, because we were worried about other sections of the sewer main. Again, this was always on our priority list, but it was lower compared to other projects. And then when we had the sewer main break, it was disastrous, so we said we need to go ahead and get these other sections lined before something else bad happens.
Madam Chairman, may I provide a point of information on
Yes.
that question?
Sure.
So, and I don't know exactly how many years ago, I'm thinking maybe eight or 10, we had a comprehensive analysis of our sewer system done, an I&I study basically, that identified defects all over. And so that's what we formulated our plan on. Of course, over 8 or 10 years, different stuff will degrade or break down stuff. but there has been a comprehensive, it's not like we're just out there saying, oh, this breaks, we need to do it. We've done a comprehensive plan on inflow and infiltration as an expensive plan, and it's part of what we use to formulate or repair strategy with DEP.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Campbell?
Yeah, that was 2012, I think, that we did that plan. But I was going to say on the DEP thing, if they won't let us put it towards I&I, maybe it'll be an improvement to Carpenter's Creek, right? Will it-
Well, the.
Water quality of Carpenter's Creek, maybe? No?
There may be an opportunity to use this as what we call an in-kind project. Each year that we have the total volume of total volume and number of sanitary sewer overflows are reported to DEP. At the end of the year, they tally that fine amount, and then we have to provide in-kind project that equals, I think, to 1.5 times the fine amount. We could see if this, continuation of the rehabilitation of that sewer main, if that may be one of those in-kind projects.
Good.
Mr.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Mr. Perkins?
And that would make sense, as long as we're getting credit for it, because there are that goes across 3 county districts, 5, 3, and 4. That creek runs all through there, and I can't think of one that would have more. Well, maybe Navy Point and stuff, but there are a few that would have more impact on surface waters. I mean, that creek goes all throughout the urban core and empties into Bayou Tahar, which feeds into Pensacola Bay. So, I mean, it is a major source of potential problems and a major source of potential improvement if we're able to get it rehabilitated.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. I see no more lights. We are voting on the consent agenda. Please vote. And it passes 5-0. The next item is the budget report. Is Mr. Smith? Yes. Will you enlighten us, Mr. Smith?
Good afternoon. You have on this agenda, this is the interim financial statement as of March 31st. You typically get a monthly budget actual report on expenses, but this is a full financial statement that shows a little bit more detail about our financial condition. I really don't have a whole lot to point out on here. Everything is trekking along as we should. On the water side, the revenues, we're showing a little less than 50% on the operating revenues, which is typical. We get the majority of our revenues during the summer months. So, like you mentioned earlier about the winter quarter averaging, people are using less water in the winter time, and so once that comes up, our sewer revenue will increase once those go into effect, and then we'll have more water revenue in the summer months when we have less rain and people are more active. But other than that, everything is, as we would expect it to be.
Does anyone have questions? Mr. Perkins?
I was just going to highlight, what he was saying is that early in the year is a very wet year. Now it's been very dry the last week or so, and the next week or two is going to be very dry, and it's the watering season with the lawns and stuff. So I imagine that number will straighten out nicely. But I always pray during election year it's a very wet year. I hate when I've had to run a couple years when we're in severe drought and everybody's got these astronomical bills, and it's tough to do.
Mr. Stevens?
No, clearly building is good. I'm looking at impact fees here. That's kind of sticks out with the triple digits.
Yes, we are, from a budget perspective, we try to be conservative on budgeting for impact fees because we don't know, what we're going to get. We don't know what type of building is going to occur. But yes, we are well ahead of schedule on the connection charges and impact fees for this year.
Yeah, I'm assuming, that's probably a conservative number because as much building and construction is going on, and then anticipated building and construction, and then neighborhoods that have been proposed. I'm assuming that's a general guesstimate.
Are you talking about on the budget figure?
Yeah, I'm talking about, the impact fees as far as what you're projecting it to be.
Yeah, we look at, we try to look at the last 4 or 5 years average and then, do our budgeting on those type of fees based on that, just because it is a smaller percentage of our overall revenue. We don't want to try to predict the future and budget, $10 million in impact fees and then have the building come to a halt and
Okay.
not get that. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Perkins?
That's kind of a comment I was gonna make, that connection charges, are already at 148%, and that, our fiscal year ends in October. So that's really promising. Well, the good thing about connection charges is along with those comes monthly payments, monthly sewer charges, monthly water charges. And so, we're always real conservative with our budget estimates, just because it's better to be safe than sorry, But with all the growth we're experiencing, a lot of these connection charges, they haven't connected yet, so we're not seeing that revenue. But I suspect that next year is probably gonna be and the rest of this year is probably gonna be a pretty good year financially with all the growth we're seeing.
Okay, Mr. Smith, I see no more questions. Thank you. The next item is the Executive Director's report. Mr. Woody?
I really only have one item that I want to point out, and that's, there was an addition to, or an attachment and a note on your last ECUA board report concerning Central Water Reclamation Facility effluent discharge options. If you haven't had an opportunity yet to take a look at that, I would encourage you to do so. One of the important roles that staff has is not only daily operations, but to have some foresight and be looking quite a ways down the line and identify potential problems. Some of those are short-term, some of those are long-term issues. And right now, we've had wonderful and continued cooperation and assistance with our reuse partners, Gulf Power and Next Energy, Gulf Power, who is now at Next Energy, as well as International Paper. But policies change at the state level, partnerships change, priorities change, et cetera, and the potential for some of those to continue to be long-term partners will vary over time. So we're trying to look ahead and identify needs, potential expenses, and potential investments we need to make. So this will be something we'll be talking quite a bit more. So if you haven't had a chance, I would, again, encourage you to please have an opportunity to look at that. There's about 5 pages of information about some options that we're investigating, as well as an attachment of a copy of a piece of legislation that was passed here recently that has some bearing on that topic.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Ms. Campbell?
I'm so glad he sent that out. It's been one of my biggest worries for the last several years, so I too hope everybody reads it, and let's start planning what we're gonna do with our reclaimed water. I don't wanna go toilet to tap like South Florida's talking.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, and one of the big disadvantages of being, there are advantages and disadvantages of being to a big environmentally diverse state, and one of the disadvantages we have here is that we're low in population, but different in geographical features. And so what happens is they've passed a policy now that there will be basically no surface water discharge of effluent, regardless of how clean it is, and that it all has to be used to recharge aquifers, and in the name of water conservation. And so the problem we have is that we have an overabundant water supply. Most of it goes out into the Gulf and just flows and is basically wasted, all that fresh water. And the policy is based on south and central and eastern Florida, the rest of the state. And so our ratepayers are going to have fairly high additional cost for a policy that makes no logical scientific sense for us. And so that's kind of unfair, but it's just the way politics is in the state. Now, if we had, this policy passed unanimously in the legislature, so there's very little chance that it's not going to be enforced and go through. But if we had, a legislative effort or attempt, or at least something to think about is, for some sort of exemption that makes sense rationally based on geography, that would be worth at least asking the legislature about or DEP about, or some way to work around that. Even to the point, I hate to even mention this because this could get out of hand, that we trade off some of our water abundance, but then you do that, they may figure out, oh, they got all the water up there, they may come for all of it, so I don't know if that would make sense or not, but I am concerned. I mean, it's kind of like when we had the backflow preventer things that the state mandated. We were opposed to that, didn't want to do it, didn't make sense on, ground level, single family residences or people that were on wells that weren't even connected to, to our water system, having to have backflow preventers. And so, you get these statewide policies that a lot of times have no basis in rational reasoning. So I'm wondering and hopeful that there might be something we can do so that we don't basically put unnecessary charges and fees on our ratepayers. So I don't, this will be an ongoing discussion, and we'll be thinking about that as we explore all the options. But I just hate when a government imposes cost to the ratepayers don't see it or don't know where it's coming from or why, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, if it made sense, it would be understandable, but unnecessary cost on the ratepayers are difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Campbell?
We can certainly all reach out to our delegation on it because, I know that Senator Bryson's very aware of it because we talked about it last year. They tried to push this through last year and it didn't go through, but then it did go through this year. So I think it'd be smart just to get in front of it and, talk to them and see if we can get some kind of exemption. I'm with you. Exemption would be what we need. And that's what was discussed last year. And almost kind of promised, that, yeah, well, we know Northwest Florida isn't the same animal. So I say we all try to reach out and talk with them about it.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Does that conclude your report, Mr. Woody? Thank you. The next is the attorney's report. Mr. Beasley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Only one small matter to report as update on some of the litigation that's pending. The court has, in the Odom Barlow case, has entered an order requiring mediation per our request, and that mediation is to be conducted in the next 120 days, with the mediator being selected in the next 30. So we anticipate in the next 30 days we'll have a mediator identified, and then while the parties are allowed 120 days, we don't typically take that much time, and so in the next 30 to 60 days we should have some type of result or report from that mediation effort.
Good news. Thank you. Mr. Perkins?
And I don't know, if it's the wrong place to answer the question, let me know. But I know that we had talked about getting a firm to take it on a contingency basis and using that as kind of a hammer in negotiations if we could do that. Have we had any luck with that, or is that something we should discuss privately?
I think I can answer it without executive session. We have identified a firm to do so. The goal, as set out in last executive session, was to get the parties into mediation and see if we could resolve the matter before switching gears, if you would, or trains, if you would. And so we're ready to do that. Our very next step was to ask the court to compel the mediation, which has been done now. So if we come out of a mediation unsuccessful, then we'll certainly entertain that direction.
And so that's our motion, we want the mediation, and we've kind of forced the hand on that, and there are some advantages to doing that.
We have sought it, we sought it informally, which parties can always agree to mediate, and was unsuccessful in convincing the other side to do it informally, and so we asked the court to compel it. Court's a big fan of mediation, and if asked, generally they will, without some exceptional reason, they will compel the parties to the table.
Nothing else to report?
No further report, thank you.
Thank you. We have one item of unfinished business, emergency work. Do you have anything to amplify on that, Mr. Woody?
Just background information that, as you'll remember, anything over $50,000 comes to the board unless there's a reason otherwise. I did authorize an emergency purchase in this particular case of $64,000. Twofold. First and foremost, as an emergency need, we need to get it prepared before it failed. This is a lift station that serves a subdivision just north of Mobile Highway on the west side of town. But keep in mind also that this is being partially reimbursed by FEMA, and in order to keep that paperwork flowing and ensure our reimbursement, we need to do it on a timely basis as well.
Thank Anyone have any questions on that? All right. We have no new business. Does anyone have anything on board communications? Mr. Perkins?
Let's just hope and pray they get that bridge open this week.
Yes. Yeah. Anyone else? We come to our second open forum. I have no pink slips. Has anyone requested to speak in the next open forum? Seeing none, we're adjourned.